state calls David Austin to the stand.
Solemnly swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God. Okay, go ahead and have a seat there. You got that mic there in front of you. I need you to state your name and spell it for me so that my court reporter can hear it.
David Austin, D-A-V-I-D-A-U-S-T-I-N.
Okay, you're going 100 miles an hour. Okay, take a deep breath. Keep it loud, but let's slow it down a little bit. I know you want to get it out, but we just need to be able to understand it. Okay? Do it again.
David Austin, D-A-V-I-D-A-U-S-T-I-N.
Can you guys hear him? No, they're stretching it there. Now, you talk perfectly fine when you're over here with me. Let's light them up. Let's let them hear it, okay? Okay, Mr. Zion.
Thank you, sir. Where did you grow up, Mr. Austin?
I'm sorry?
Where'd you grow up?
I was all over the United States and overseas. I was an Army brat.
Okay. At some point, did you meet a young lady named Bonnie Austin? Bonnie. Wasn't Bonnie Austin at the time. When did you meet Bonnie? Let's start there.
I met her in West Virginia.
All right. Were you living in West Virginia at the time?
No, I lived in Columbus.
All right. When did you meet Bonnie?
It was, if my memory serves correctly, it was July in 82, I believe it was.
1982?
Yes, it was, no, it was March of 82.
All right. You went on a date with Bonnie?
Yes.
How many months later were you two married?
We got married in July of 82.
All right. How long were you two married?
We were married 35 years.
All right. Where did you two live after you got married?
We lived here in Columbus.
What did you do for a living?
I was a truck driver.
All right. Did Bonnie work outside the home?
She was a waitress.
All right. Did you two have any children together?
One.
All right. Was that a son or a daughter?
Pardon?
Did you have a son or a daughter?
A daughter.
All right. And did you raise her here in Columbus?
Yes.
All right. Back in September of 2018, was Bonnie having any problems health-wise?
Yes.
Tell us about the problems she was having that day.
She had the day, she was having trouble breathing, so she did a breathing machine. She tried to get her breathing. She didn't do no good, so we called the emergency squad. The emergency squad came.
I'm going to stop you there. You said you had a breathing machine at home?
Yes.
Had this been an ongoing problem for Bonnie?
The breathing, yes.
All right. Had she been to the hospital before for this?
Yes.
Had she been recently to the hospital before for this?
I can't remember the last time she was there.
All right. Did she have a diagnosis related to her breathing that you were aware of?
Yes.
Do you remember what that disease was called?
What it's called, I can't remember exactly.
Fair enough. But it was an ongoing problem and she had a breathing machine at home?
Yes.
And did the breathing machine take care of it usually?
Majority of the time, yes.
Did it take care of it on September 18th?
No.
So you called the squad? What happened next?
They came, they checked her out, said they had to take her to the emergency room.
All right. What happened next?
I told her that I would see her at the emergency room, excuse me, as they were taking out the door, taking her to the squad. I said, okay, honey, I'll see you at the emergency room. And then she was talking to the ambulance people, the emergency room squad people, and they took her out to the squad, getting her set up. I noticed that they were doing, started doing CPR to her.
All right. What happened next?
When they doing CPR, then they started took her to the hospital.
Loaded her on and got her to the hospital.
Yes, sir.
What hospital did they take her to?
Mount Carmel.
Which Mount Carmel?
Mount Carmel West.
What did you do next?
I got in my car and I went to Mount Carmel West.
All right. Did you call anybody in your family?
I called my daughter.
Okay. Does your daughter have any children?
She has 3. She has 4 now, but 3 at that time.
All right. Did she have a son at that time who was almost grown or grown up at that point?
Yes.
What's his name?
Caleb Clark.
How old was he back in 2018?
He was 18, I believe, at the time.
All right. And just so the jury knows the family relations, was Caleb with anybody? Did he have a girlfriend?
He had a girlfriend, yes. He had a girlfriend, yes.
What was Caleb's girlfriend's name?
Tammy.
Tammy. All right. So what happened when you got to the hospital? How long do you think it took you to get to the hospital, and then what happened?
It just took a few minutes for me to get to the hospital because we're not that far from it.
Okay.
And then we got to the hospital. We had gotten in the emergency room. We're waiting to find out what was happening.
Now you say we, are other family members there with you in the emergency room?
There was my daughter finally got there because I had called her and told her that what had happened. My grandson got there. His girlfriend, my girlfriend's mother and father were also there.
Okay. You said my girlfriend's father and mother were?
I said his girlfriend, my grandson's girlfriend and his, let me start again. My grandson's girlfriend's mother and father were there.
All right, so I'm going to stop you there. Let's write this down. So you're David, right?
That is correct.
And your wife's name is Bonnie, right?
Correct.
And you and Bonnie have a girl. And what's her name?
Laura.
Laura. And Laura had some children.
Correct.
And one of those children was, what was the boy's name?
Caleb.
Caleb. So Caleb is your grandson, right?
Correct.
And when you say we, is Laura there at the ER with you guys?
Laura was there. I called her and she came, yes.
Was Caleb there?
Caleb was there, yes.
All right. Now when Caleb showed up, and he's young, but is he an adult at this point, 18?
He was 18, yes, he was.
All right. And you said he had a girlfriend?
Yes.
All right. You said her name was Tammy?
Tara, I'm sorry, Tara.
Caleb's girlfriend's name is Tara.
Yes, I'm sorry.
So Caleb is your grandson and his girlfriend is Tara. Now did Tara bring any of her family to the ER?
Her mother and father.
And what's Tara's mom's name?
Tammy.
Tammy, that's the Tammy.
What
Okay, I get it, it's all right. All right, and then Tara's dad was there too? What was his name? What is
I don't remember his name.
That's okay. All right. So that's the group that's there at the ER that you remember?
Correct.
All right. What happens next?
We're waiting at the emergency room, waiting to find out what happened to my wife. Eventually, the emergency room doctor, or the nurse, I can't remember who came out, told us to come, no, there was a doctor came out and told us to come in, that my wife was ready. They told us, don't worry about the tubes and wires that were on my wife because that, and I said, don't worry about it, I've seen her with tubes and stuff here before. And then he said that she had a collapsed lungs, which they had to inflate, and that her heart had stopped several times. I can't remember exactly how many times it was. But her heart was beating somewhat on its own, but with the help of the machine, it was okay. And her lungs were breathing on its own, but it had to have the machine to help him. And that he was going to send her up to ICU. I said, okay, no problem. But he said that he believes that she was going to make it. She was going to be okay, that he believed she was going to be okay.
All right. What happens next? What time of day is this? This is all on the same day, right?
Yes, it was later in the evening. Yes.
Okay, so we're still on September 30th?
Pardon?
We're still on that same date,
On the
September 30th?
Yes, sir.
So what happens next? You're told this, are you standing physically in the emergency room?
Yes, I was next to my wife, yes. And
Were you able to talk to your wife?
no, she was unable to speak or do anything.
Okay. What happens next?
We went back out to the emergency room, the waiting room, and he sent her up to,
I'm standing back here because I'm trying to...
we went out and he sent her up to ICU, and me, my daughter, let me stop again. My daughter said, okay, since she's going to be okay, she left to go home and take care of her other kids. And me, Caleb, his girlfriend, and her mother and father went to ICU.
Okay, so at the ICU now, it's you, Caleb, Caleb's girlfriend, Tara, and Tara's mom and dad.
Correct.
Do you remember where you had to go? Is it on the same level as the ER, or did you go in an elevator? How'd you get there?
Elevator.
All right. What happens, I want you to look back in your mind, you're getting off that elevator, what happens next?
There's a waiting room there in the ICU. And so we're waiting around for the ICU, waiting for someone to tell us what's going on so we can go back in and see my wife.
Okay. Was it crowded in that waiting room? Were there a lot of people there?
As far back as I can remember, I don't believe there was hardly anybody at all.
Do you remember what time of day it was? You said it was the evening. Is it late evening, early evening?
It was late evening. I think it was around 11 or somewhere in that area, 10, 11, somewhere in that area.
Okay. So you're waiting. Do you remember, could you give the jury an estimate of how long you think you waited for someone to come out and talk to you?
No, it wasn't very long.
Okay. What happens next?
Dr. Husel came out and told me she was brain dead, that her heart was dead, her lungs were dead, that the machine was the only thing keeping her alive. What do you want us to do? And then I told him that she didn't want to be like a vegetable. She wanted the living will. I had a living will. She wanted to have a living will. I told him that she didn't want to be like that. She didn't want to be no vegetable. And I said, is there any chance she'd come out of it? He said no. I said, well, she said she didn't want to be no vegetable. She wanted to have it taken off. She didn't want to be there. And I asked him one last time, I said, is there any chance of her coming back? Again, he said no. I said, pull the plug.
Okay. Now, looking back in your mind, do you remember those words, or is that your own, interpretation of those words of what Dr. Husel said when you said she's brain dead, her heart's dead, etc.? What? Are you sure those are the words he used, or is that just what you're thinking?
Those are his words. Those are his words. That's exactly what he said.
If that had not been told to you, would you have agreed to, what in your
No,
words,
I
pull the
would
plug?
not have.
Okay. What happened next with you?
Me, I took off, I went off, took a long walk through the hospital. I couldn't stay, I had to go walk off somewhere, I had to go be by myself. When
What
I
was
could-
your emotional state at that point?
I couldn't, I couldn't do nothing.
Do you remember how long you took this, you went on a walk for?
I don't know. It was quite a while. I went to the hospital. I don't know where I went. I don't know how long it was. The only person I seen throughout the hospital was one of the ladies laying there. I told her I didn't want to talk to nobody. Just leave me alone. I don't want to talk to nobody. And the time I got back, my grandson told me she was gone, and that was it.
So you weren't there when they pulled
No.
the plug? You weren't there when your wife passed?
No.
What happened next?
I left the hospital, and then I had to go to get her funeral arranged and started.
All right. So that was all on the same day that she came into the hospital on September 30th of 2018?
Yes, sir.
At some point later that year, or maybe at the beginning of the next year, did you receive a call from the hospital?
Yes, sir.
All right, I don't want you to tell us what they told you, but based upon what you were told regarding the care of your wife, Bonnie, did you contact a private attorney?
I was told,
No, not what you were told,
What he was told.
Sustained.
not what you were told, but you got a call. Did you get a call?
I did get a phone call from Mount
Okay.
Carmel.
And then based on what you were told, without telling us what you were told, but just based on that, did you go and get a private attorney? Did
Yes.
you get an attorney?
Yes,
Did you sue the hospital and everybody involved in this?
yes,
All right. Is that litigation still, is that suit still pending?
yes.
Thank you. I have no further questions.
Ms. Menashe?
What? Oh, I'm sorry. Just one. Nothing further, guys. Thank you.
Ms. Menashe?
Thank you. Morning. I'm Diane Menashe on behalf of Dr. Husel. Sir, and I know you have a right to be present, but I'm just curious. Have you been watching this trial from inside the courtroom?
And most of the time I see it just on TV, on the news, just on the news.
Okay. Were you here in court prior to your testimony today when the nurse testified?
Just outside, I didn't come inside, I was outside.
So I want to ask you some follow-up questions if I can. Have you ever been provided with the medical records of your wife?
Yes,
And did you review those?
I didn't review them, I gave them to my lawyer, I didn't.
Okay. I'm assuming you know that in the ambulance, not only did she have the code at your house, but she had another code when she was in the ambulance. Are you aware of that?
I don't know how many codes she had, I don't know.
Okay, so you don't know that she actually had 2 codes before even getting to Mount Carmel West?
I don't know exactly how many, no.
And then do you not know that she had 3 more
Objection,
codes?
Your Honor, as to this line of questioning.
Sustained is the format of the question. Rephrase.
Well, tell me if you know, based upon your conversations in this case and your direct knowledge, do you know if your wife had 3 more codes when she was in the emergency room at Mount Carmel West in September of 2019?
I don't know exactly how many she had, no.
Okay. And is that, when you tell me you don't know, is it because you didn't ask or you haven't been provided that information?
Objection, Your Honor.
Sustained.
Have you ever asked Mr. Austin how many codes she had?
Objection, Your Honor.
I'll permit it.
No, you haven't asked. So let's go. But you did see before she got into the ambulance, as they were trying to put her in there, they were giving her CPR.
Come back. I'm sorry, I didn't hear you.
You called the ambulance, correct?
Yes.
And you witnessed, did you not, as they were putting her into the ambulance, that they were doing CPR on her?
No, they did not do CPR until she was in the ambulance.
Okay, but the ambulance was parked at your house, is that right?
Correct.
And you were able to see what was going on inside the truck?
In the ambulance, in the emergency squad, yes.
And the emergency personnel that were giving the CPR to your wife in the ambulance, those were males, were they not?
Yes.
And they were giving your wife the chest compressions.
Yes.
And I know that you testified that your wife had had vascular or heart issues for some time. Is that correct?
As far as the heart, no, it hadn't been all that long.
Okay. So when they were giving her CPR, based on your experience as a person, I'm assuming you knew what that meant when you saw that they were giving her CPR.
Yes, I did.
And then you got to the hospital. When you arrived, she was already on the ventilator, was she not? Tube down her throat?
Yes.
Okay. And so that had happened between when you saw her at the house and when you arrived at Mount Carmel West.
Yes.
When you see her in the emergency room, just so we're clear about the floors, that's the first floor as you walk into the hospital?
Yes.
Is that right? You talked about at the time that your daughter, Laura, was there with you during when you were on the emergency room floor. Is that correct?
I'm sorry.
When you were, you called your daughter to come into the hospital?
I called my daughter before I left, yes.
And I'm assuming that you called her because you knew it was serious?
Yes.
And she came to the hospital?
Yes.
And then, did you assume that she also called her children because Caleb arrived?
Caleb was with me.
Caleb was with you at the house?
Correct.
And then was Caleb's girlfriend Tara with him, or did she come separately?
I can't remember.
Can you remember if Tara came with her parents, or did they come separately?
That I can't remember.
And I think, sir, in your deposition, you said, and understandably so, that some of this is really fuzzy. Do you remember saying that?
I can't remember.
So, Laura's there in the emergency room with you.
Yes.
I know you were asked about a list of family members that were with you. One second. Do you also remember Elisa Stover, a chaplain that was with you in the emergency room?
I understand there was, I think there was a chaplain there. I can't remember. I remember talking to a female chaplain. It's the only one I can really remember.
Okay. Because then it seems as if, or do you remember that there was a second chaplain in the ICU named Carrie Miller? Do you remember her, sir?
I remember there was a female chaplain, the only one I can really remember.
Okay. And then do you remember your police interview on February of 2019? Do you remember the date of that interview?
No.
Do you remember during your interview about the conversation you had in the ICU with the doctor, and you said that you didn't remember his name?
Oh, the emergency room?
No, in the, when you had a conversation about ending end of life with respect to your wife?
It's Dr. Husel.
Okay, do you remember saying to the Columbus Police Department when you were asked about the doctor, you said, that doctor, whatever his name is, I can't remember his name, and then the detective said, okay, that's fine. Do you remember that?
No, I don't.
Would it refresh your recollection if I showed you a certified transcript? Would it refresh your recollection? Because, tell me why it wouldn't refresh your recollection.
I doubt it, because you could write anything, but it still wouldn't help me.
Okay. Tell me this, sir, just in your everyday life, and I know you were a father, do you find that as a father and with your children, do their memories get better with time?
I don't know.
Would you agree that if I asked you what you had for breakfast 12 days ago, you might not be able to remember what you had for breakfast 12 days ago?
No.
But if I asked you today what you had for breakfast, you might be more able to answer that question.
Yeah.
And the first interview that you gave in this case was in February of 2019, is that right?
No, I don't know.
So you don't know the date of the interview that you gave
No.
with the police department? Do you know the date that you filed the lawsuit?
No.
Do you know the date that you had the call with Mount Carmel West?
No.
Do you know the name of the emergency room doctor that
No.
that treated your wife?
Okay, you gotta help me out here. Let her finish her question, then you can answer, okay? Okay.
No, you don't know the name of the emergency room doctor.
No.
Do you remember the name of the female nurse that you indicated that was with your wife? That treated your wife?
I didn't know there was a nurse.
So you don't remember any nurses that were with your wife when she was at Mount Carmel West?
No.
And is that true? No nurses either in the emergency room or in the ICU?
I said I don't remember any nurse there, period.
And just so I'm clear, so the jury knows, sir, do you mean that you don't even, if you were to close your eyes, you can't even visualize any nurses caring for your wife?
I'm saying I don't remember seeing any nurses. I'm saying there was, I'm not saying there wasn't. I'm saying I don't remember seeing any nurses. The only one I went in there was a doctor.
And when you say the only one that you remember was a doctor, was that on the ER?
It's in the ER, correct.
And then did you see any doctors when you were on the ICU floor?
The only doctor I saw was Dr. Husel, because when I never went in to see my wife when she was in ICU. I never went into my wife's room, period.
Okay. So, and I wanted to ask you some questions about that. It's your testimony today that, tell me if I'm wrong, the last time you saw your wife was on the first floor of the hospital, is that right?
Correct.
You never saw your wife on the ICU?
Correct.
And when you had this conversation with Dr. Husel, do you remember in February of 2019 telling the police that no one else was there when you had the conversation with Dr. Husel? Do you remember that?
No.
And so, you didn't say that, or no, you don't remember saying that?
I don't remember saying that.
And can I assume that your same response about refreshing recollection is true? Nothing would refresh your recollection?
She wants to know, is there anything that you could look at to refresh your memory?
No.
Then you indicated that you had this conversation with Dr. Husel, and I can presume from your testimony a few minutes ago that no nurses, you don't remember any nurses around for that conversation either. Is that right?
I don't remember seeing no nurses, period. Thank you.
When was the first time you were provided with Dr. Husel's name?
I don't know. I don't know.
I know you, you used the word dead, brain dead, heart dead, lungs dead. You knew at the time that your wife was on an external pacemaker. Is that right?
Did I use it?
Did you know that? You knew that, right, sir? That when she was in the ER, she was put, an external pacemaker was put on her.
What she had on her, I don't know. I just know that they said she had a machine helping her heart. What it was called, I don't know.
Okay. And so did you know then that she was maxed out on vasopressors?
Pardon?
She was maxed out on medication called vasopressors, or levodopa.
No, I don't know.
But you know that visually she was on the ventilator, is that right?
It was being helped her, but he said that she was, her lungs were working on her own, but it was need help.
Okay.
And her heart was working to be, and it needed help, but it did need help.
And with respect to the heart, she had had a heart attack a month prior when she was in Tennessee, right?
Correct.
So then she had a history of heart issues because she had a heart attack a month earlier.
That's the only one I know of.
And you knew that when she was in the ER, and she was on the ventilator. I remember in your deposition, you talked about how she had been on a ventilator previous in her life. Do you remember that?
Yes, I do believe.
And when she was on a ventilator, was that at Mount Carmel West?
I believe.
And previously, when she was on a ventilator at Mount Carmel West, was she there overnight?
I won't say yes and I won't say no.
Okay. It could have been.
It could have.
And I asked the question, and so, do you know when she was on the ventilator previously at Mount Carmel West?
No.
But we know at some point that she came off of the ventilator from that prior time, right?
Yes.
And do you have any knowledge or indication if Dr. Husel was working when she was previously on that ventilator at Mount Carmel West?
No.
And I know I had asked you about her heart conditions before arriving at Mount Carmel West on September 30th. But as her husband, I'm assuming you know that she had had 4 different hospitalizations in the last 3 months before her final time at Mount Carmel West, right?
I'm not sure.
Were you told, or do you know, sir, that when she was on the ventilator on September 30th, 2018, that she was at 100% oxygen support on the bed?
I don't know.
Did you know, sir, at the time that despite the ventilator, the vasopressors, and the external pacemaker, that her blood pressure was still 64/12?
I don't know.
But you did that night, sir, make the decision based on your wife's wishes that there be the ventilator be withdrawn, correct?
Yes.
And as you've expressed in your Columbus Police Department interview and in your deposition, she, your wife, had made it clear that she did not want to be on a ventilator, correct?
Yes, if she's going to be lived like a vegetable, no, she doesn't want to live like that.
And when you made the decision, and I think you said pull the plug, you knew, sir, that meant that all those life-saving measures, the ventilator, the pacemaker, the vasopressors, those would be turned off.
Yes.
You knew that.
Yes.
After you made the decision, I know you talked about going for a walk. Fair to say, sir, that that walk of yours was a very emotional experience within the hospital for you.
Oh, yeah.
And you left, and then, to your knowledge, Caleb and his girlfriend and her parents stayed behind.
Yes,
Is that right?
yes,
I remember you being asked about whether you thought Dr. Husel was kind at the time. I'm not asking you how you feel now about Dr. Husel, sir, but during your deposition, do you remember being asked what you thought about his demeanor at the time? Do you remember being asked that?
yes.
And do you remember what you said, sir?
At the time, I thought he was okay at the time. I think that's what I said, or something like that.
I understand, sir. And I understand now that you have litigation pending, correct?
Yes,
And I assume, sir, that when a doctor tells you something, at least initially, you believe it, right?
if he told me the truth, yes.
And is the same true, sir, when Mount Carmel calls you, that you believe that?
I believe it.
Can you repeat this?
Yes. And is the same true, sir, when Mount Carmel calls you and tells you their version of events? You believe that too?
Yes.
Nothing further.
Redirect. Are you guys think you need more than a couple minutes?
What?
You think you need more than a couple minutes? I saw you look at the clock.
No, I'm not going to be more than 3 minutes.
Okay.
Do you remember what you had for breakfast 12 days ago?
No.
Do you remember when you were told your wife was brain dead?
Yes.
That sticks out in your mind?
Something like that would, yes.
Why did Laura leave?
She had children to take care of. She thought because my wife was going to be okay, so she had other kids to take care of then.
And that was after you guys talked to the ER doctor?
Yes.
It was your wife's wishes not to be on a ventilator? Remember that question?
Yes, after she was soon dead.
What was that?
After she was brain dead, she didn't want to be on life support.
And that's why you said what you said?
Yes.
Nothing.
We're going to go ahead and take lunch, ladies and gentlemen. Let's come back at 1. We're going to try to get through some more witnesses this afternoon. Remember the admonition, is an hour long enough for y'all? You okay? Okay. Just hang tight for a minute.
All rise.
We're going to get them out the door, and then I'll get you out the door. Have a great lunch, guys. I'm the only one who doesn't have to stand, but that's okay. I usually do.